Okay, so it's the Stories of Who We Are project.
Yeah.
And Dan's sitting here interviewing me in my living room. So here I am, Colleen Purdon. I'm a city councillor here at Owen Sound. This is my third year, so I'm a new city councillor, but not as new as I was when I first started. And Dan's prepared a whole bunch of questions for me to go through. So I'll just give it a go. And the first question is, what brought me here to Owen Sound? So that's a great question. I came here in 1986 with my husband Joachim and three of our four children to take a job at the Women's Center. They were looking for an executive director. I had just come back from living in Germany for 7 years, where I had my three children. I met my husband. I was looking for a job. And so I applied and I was hired as the executive director of the Women's Center. It was a shelter for abused women and children. I had worked for about 10 years in mental health and addiction services. I had really no experience with abused women. In fact, it was a bit of a shock to me when I started working at the shelter. So where did all these women come from? I really didn't know there were so many abused women in Owen Sound, and I was pretty sure they weren't just in Owen Sound. So that was really quite a surprise for me coming here. It was a great job. I was there for about 8 years. I had another child, Matthias, who's out and about here in the house, back home. And so we've been here since then. Our family, kids all grew up here, and we liked living here. So that's what brought me to Owen Sound, a job, but it actually also has made me stay in Owen Sound too, because the work here has been very, very important. So you want to know what distinguishes Owen Sound from other cities I've lived in? Well, how many cities have I lived in? I'm actually kind of a rural person. I grew up in a little village, about 800 people, a railroad village. So I lived in Kingston. I went to university there. It was my first experience with a city, which I loved because it was on the water. I think that was the most important thing about being in a city for me, was that I was close to the water. I lived in London, England for a year when I did my music therapy training. That was very, very exciting, living in a huge international city right in the middle of it. It was fantastic. And then other than that, I've lived in little towns and medium-sized towns and really small towns. But I'd say what distinguishes Owen Sound from other cities I've lived in is the fact that it's small. It's a city and it's small, so you can kind of walk or ride the bike from one side to the other in probably an hour, at the very most, from one side to the other, probably closer to 20 minutes. But it has almost all of the things that cities need to have, I think. It has really wonderful museums, a very rich and vibrant cultural life, a symphony orchestra, wonderful musicians and artists and craftspeople, a great market, farmers market. It has some, great infrastructure. We have a wonderful new rec center that we just built, but even before, the Y was really a good facility. So it has a lot of the things that I think cities need to have. It has public transit, has beautiful parks, really wonderful parks. And what makes it really different than any other city I've lived in is that you have immediate access to water, rivers, the Bruce Trail, farms, you name it. I mean, there's all kinds of, I wouldn't say really wilderness, but really beautiful remote places that are basically just outside the door. So I've never lived in a city that has that kind of immediate access to really wonderful walking and hiking and biking and canoeing and kayaking and sailing and swimming and all those kinds of things. So yeah, that's what's different, I think. So now you want to know, what are the notable changes the city's undergone since I moved here? So this is almost 30 years. I can't believe that. 30 years is such a long time. What's changed? Well, I think we're a more mature city than when I first came here. I think when I first moved here, Owen Sound, it felt very kind of remote and kind of isolated in a lot of ways. I think we're a bit more cosmopolitan now. Maybe that's because there's more people have moved here bringing their cosmopolitan attitudes, or we have more newcomers who've moved here, or maybe we've just grown up, we have a little more confidence as a city. I think that's changed. I think there's more attention being paid to the beauty of the city, maintaining the heritage, and really being proud of the kind of cultural things that we have here. I think that's changed. I think we're a prouder city now than when I moved here. And we're more connected. It could be just because with the internet and things, everybody can feel more connected now. Certainly when I moved here, it felt kind of disconnected, you know. You really felt like you're in a little satellite in a way, and I don't feel that way any longer. I think people from the south don't know about Owen Sound. We are kind of, a lot of people don't know about this city, but I think in the city, I think we feel more connected with the outside. So that's really changed a lot. I think some of the attitudes have changed here. Certainly when I came here, I was working at a shelter for abused women, and some of the funding came from Grey County Social Services. And Grey County Social Services, I went up and did a presentation to them, and the administrator actually told me that he didn't support the shelter for abused women at all. He thought they were just there to wreck marriages, and he didn't think they were a good idea at all. That was in 1986. I mean, I was stunned. Yeah. And the Social Services Committee in Grey County were not prepared to provide any more support because they really didn't think it was a supportable service, and that really there wasn't as much abuse as they all talk about. And I remember where I was asking for more funding, and they said, well, we don't want to provide more funding. Otherwise, women will just come to the shelter. They'll put their feet up and they'll never leave. I thought, oh, you guys really need to come down and have a look at this shelter. We were crammed into a tiny little house, a 10-bed shelter. We actually had times where we had 2 families in one room. It was so crowded. I was down in the basement and I couldn't stand up. It was, you know, I knocked myself out on my second day of work, hitting a beam with my head. We were so crammed in there. Like, later we did move and find a better facility. But at that time, I said, you really need to come down and have a look, because I don't know of anybody who would want to put their feet up and stay here. But the fact is that they haven't got any other place to go, you know. So at that time, they would only fund for 2 weeks of stay. And that was the lowest amount of any county in the province. I've done a little survey. Anyway, things have really changed. We have, Grey County is very progressive and forward-thinking. They're very supportive of social services, and they've got great programs up at the county. And there's the whole attitudinal change towards women, violence against women, all of those things. That's really changed. I spent the first years of my time at the Women's Centre being accused of being a man-hater because I was speaking out about violence against women. And I remember saying that if I had $1 for every time I had to say, no, I'm not a man-hater, I have a husband, I have 2 sons, I don't hate men, I just want the violence against women to stop. And I want people to get involved with that. And that's really changed. No one in this community would say, because you speak out about violence against women, that there's something wrong with you. People generally are really, really engaged with addressing violence in families. So that's really changed. What's stayed the same? Well, I guess I said earlier, I still think people don't know about us. Like if I'm in Toronto and say I'm from Owen Sound, they usually think it's Parry Sound, and you know, they don't know the difference between Parry Sound and Owen Sound, or they think it's kind of on the other side of the province. Well, is that about 8 hours drive? No, it's 2.5, 3 hours. Lots of people in the Golden Horseshoe, they don't know where Owen Sound is unless they vacation up this way. So that stayed the same. I think we also need to kind of change the way we think about ourselves. We have a lot to be proud of in this community. I think we have lots of potential, lots of opportunity in this community that as citizens of Owen Sound we are taking advantage of or looking at the positive. I think that's kind of stayed the same. There's a lot of negativity about the city and about just things in general, but I think it's often like looking at the glass half empty. I think we have a glass that's not half empty. We need to be looking the other way. So some of that has stayed the same. We can do more there. I think what stayed the same is the inability of our region to work together. When I came here, I was stunned at how hard it was for us to come together. I was in the Women's Center and Women's Services here, and it was very difficult to work with other organizations outside of Owen Sound. Some of that's changed. There's a lot more happening at the social service level, but now that I'm on City Council, I see it everywhere where municipalities within the region, we simply don't know how to work together in a really positive way. It happens in isolated bits, but in terms of everyone saying, you know what, we're all part of a big community called Grey Bruce. We all have our individual kinds of things we want to do, but what we do really well is work together for our region. We're a long way from that. So that stayed the same as well. I hope it changes soon. So when and why did I join City Council? Well, I've always been very active in the community. I did a lot of work on women and violence, really a lot of work on rural women and poverty, all kinds of issues. And I really felt that there was no one on the Owen Sound City Council who was really bringing those types of issues forward or speaking on behalf of people who don't have a voice. And so I was kind of musing. I actually ran for the NDP in both the federal and provincial election. And of course, there would be no way in this community you would ever get elected. People said that I did actually quite well. I could talk about the issues, but it's very difficult with a social justice kind of approach to get elected here. And then so someone said, why don't you run for council? You'd be good on council. And I thought about it, and at the very last instant I decided to do that. Thinking, well, I can talk. Maybe at the local level there's opportunities to have those voices come forward, or I also really like the engagement idea of community being more engaged in the decision making. I did a big project for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities a bunch of years back about increasing women's participation in municipal decision making. It was a 2-year research grant that I headed up nationally. And then I thought, well, maybe I better put my money where my mouth is and go and do all this research and how women should be more involved, more engaged. We should have more consultative practices in communities. So I ran for council thinking, maybe I can do some of those things. So how has the City Council changed since you began? Well, first of all, it's one thing to run for council. It's another thing then to learn how City Council operates. And in a way, it's like a board of directors of a very big organization, but there's a political aspect, of course, because you get elected. And it's very bureaucratic. The council and municipal governance is very bureaucratic, and it's very prescribed, and there's only so much municipalities can do, and there's a lot of other legislation, provincially and federally, that shapes decision making, that provides kind of boundaries and limits to what you can do. There's a lot to learn. So I really felt I spent my whole first year just figuring out how this all works. The other is that I have done lots of community work, but usually it's been more informal, like meetings and gatherings and consulting, but it's not been with the formality of a legislated municipal process. So there was a learning curve with that as well. How do you get things happening? Like it was, okay, how can we get a decision on this? And it's a really elaborate process that you have to go through, and you sit at council meetings and you have some discussion, then you realize that things have moved on. If you don't make a motion for a decision, nothing happens. Everything's done through motions. And I've always been involved at tables where we decide, yes, there's a good idea, and on we go. But at municipal council meetings, you don't really care about the ideas. It's about, a motion, a decision, and whether you can garner enough support to move it forward. So often it feels like you're just kind of punting small decisions forward, and then great big huge decisions come along. And for example, we're looking at harbour divestiture right now. That's a gigantic decision for the city. Transit, how we're going to support and fund transit. These are big decisions, those kinds of things. Budget, can people, afford taxation levels to support the services we have? And often then you're scrambling for information, so many diverse ideas. So I think, I don't think City Council has changed much. I think I've changed. I've always been a fairly patient person. You don't take on issues like violence against women thinking, oh, we're going to get that figured out. It's going to be a long time. My children's children maybe will reap the benefits of some of the work we're doing now. City Council is also a very slow process. You have to kind of be in it for the long haul. So 3 years in, I feel like I'm in it for this long haul anyway, and if I could get elected again, I would do it another 4 years. Has the experience changed me? I don't think so. The city manager said to me last night when I was voting against cutting transit that it was good that I'm speaking out, and I was saying, well, I'm good at speaking out. It doesn't seem to be getting me anywhere because the motion was approved to cut the transit on Saturday and the hours of the operation, and there were only 2 of us who voted against it. Everybody else thinks that's a very fine idea. So I don't think it's changed me. I'm not going to be quiet about the stuff that I think is really important for the quality of life in our community. It hasn't changed me personally, but I think I still have more to learn. I have a lot to learn about how to get these processes moving forward. So right now I'm very involved in trying to get welcoming communities as an initiative. How can our city be more welcoming for newcomers? So not only new Canadians or new immigrants, but also young people, maybe young people who lived here and moved away, coming back. New people from the city who might like to live here. It's a beautiful place to live. How can we open the doors? So I'm very involved with that. So it's not city council work, but it's very connected to the economic development of the city and to the quality of life in the city. So I'm trying to do that bit and then see how to bring that forward within the auspices of the council. So those types of things, I still have a lot of things to figure out. Would it be easier for you to be a community activist in a city other than Owen Sound? I think so. I think it would be easier in some respects because there'd be more support. There are times in the city where you can feel quite alone on issues. For example, when I started as a city councillor, I was really astonished to find that we started our council meetings with the Lord's Prayer. I mean, I had no idea why we would do that. It's not church, it's secular government meeting. Why would we be saying the Lord's Prayer? And I didn't know that was the practice. So I asked why we were doing that, and said that I thought we should have a different way of starting our council meetings to make it more inclusive. So, because I've been working for years with an inclusive communities committee to try and make our community more inclusive, and I thought, well, how would you feel if you're Jewish or Buddhist or Muslim or an atheist or an agnostic coming to a council meeting? When we start, everybody bows their head and says the Lord's Prayer. Anyway, I got so much reaction from the community, it was unbelievable. For me, I didn't think it was a terrifically radical thing because, you know, that's already all gone through the court system. Somebody took the municipality of Penetang to court, went right to the Supreme Court of Ontario, and the municipality was told to cease and desist, basically. You can't do that. So I didn't know why it was a big deal. Anyway, lots of pushback on that. So there are supports. There are other people, but on council itself, it was all pretty quiet, and some very outspoken councillors about keeping the Lord's Prayer, as if it was somehow improper to suggest that we shouldn't do it, or it's our tradition and culture, is what they said. And I don't think it is our tradition and culture to say the Lord's Prayer at a city council meeting. It was their council, but not. It's not our culture. I think that's making an assumption that it's our culture. Maybe it's yours, but it's certainly not mine, and lots of other people. Anyway, so I could be an activist in another city, certainly, and I think there are many activists in the city of Owen Sound. There's lots of good work being done, but you know, you have to be kind of quiet activist here. So activism takes a bit of a different face here. But I belong to a group, the Grey Bruce Peace and Justice group, which is looking at peace and justice issues. And it's a very active group, and we're very active on speaking out. We did a forum on democracy this fall that was incredibly, no, it wasn't the fall, it was the spring. Yeah, it was incredibly well attended, and you know, that kind of activism works well here. And what's the last question? Anything you'd like to add about my relationship with the city? Oh, I really love Owen Sound. I think it's not just Owen Sound, Grey Bruce. I think it's a great place to live and a great place to raise a family. The community has been very, very good to me. Wonderful friends and relationships. It's a great quality of life here. So I have a very close relationship, I think, with our community and with many people in this community. I've moved a lot in my life, and I don't have any interest in living somewhere else. I love to travel. I will travel anywhere at any time. I've traveled all over the world, and I'm planning to continue that. One of the things with City Council, I was really pushing for a sistering initiative with a municipality in China, which was not terribly well received by Council, but we kind of pushed that through, and now we have a sistering arrangement with Dai County in China, and we've got that organized, and I am very keen on going to Dai to tell the people there what a wonderful community we have here, to come and visit and to start, you know, building that broader community outside of our borders. So I think we have lots of opportunities to build new relationships, because we actually do that quite well here in our community. So I don't think I have an interesting story for you, Danny. I got lots of stories, but I think I've talked enough.
So yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.